Hello and welcome back to the Down to the Wire podcast, episode 13. We are back again to update you on the latest and greatest in sport from the previous week. Jack, how you doing?
I'm decent. Yeah, it's been a short week and not a lot's happened, but I'm decent.
Decent. Well, the thing is that it can't be good because the Chiefs haven't played.
They haven't,
and that's the only way.
United drew, so I'm very much just like well, none of my teams lost, but also none of them won. So,
well, do you know what? It's interesting because I think it was as we were recording the podcast last week, Liverpool were playing Spurs, and we were sat there like, oh, Firmino's struggling, Mane's struggling, Trent is struggling, and then they all went and scored or assisted against Spurs, and then we also beat West Ham, who right now are in good form. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty positive right now.
I bet you are.
Absolutely. After the last 4 weeks, which have been an absolute dirge as a Liverpool fan, it's been quite a nice change. So this week we're going to be doing a bit of football talk. Suggesting like the idea of a European Super League. It's been talked about. We haven't talked about it yet, so we're going to. Also going to be delving into some of the, not necessarily transfer rumours, but there are a couple of people out of contract. Going to be discussing that. And before we get on to that, we're going to be doing a bit of a dissection for the rugby, because the Six Nations starts this coming weekend. And being Welshmen, it's a pretty big thing in Wales, so we thought we'd discuss it. Are we ready to crack on?
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. Right, Six Nations. I don't know about you, doesn't feel like that long since we were doing international rugby.
Do you think they need a Six Nations right now?
Whoa, straight in there.
I mean, this isn't even in our notes. I just kind of thought about it. I thought, we just finished the Six Nations.
Yeah.
The other one, I'm not going to say the other one was anticlimactic, because the only reason it was sort of less hype about it was because the sort of pandemic was sort of going on and split it in half almost. So I don't know. I don't know if it needs it right now. There's usually a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation going into a Six Nations, and
I mean,
it's very meh at the moment.
You could level the same argument at the Premier League, though, couldn't you? Not long since we finished the last one, and then we'll be starting the next one.
Yeah, maybe that's just because I'm less of a rugby individual than most.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think because, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's the mood for one. I almost feel like,
do you know what?
Give it another month or two, let it build.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, it's not so much, I don't know, perhaps it's normally, I think, because of the international rugby, obviously there are the hardcore people who watch the club rugby, and fair dues to you, I kind of dip in and out of it. I don't, I kind of follow it more than watch it, I would say. But, as in, the international rugby is kind of, you get the Six Nations, you get the autumn internationals, and then you get...
that might be it. There was no... Was there an autumn international?
Well, they did the autumn Nations Cup, didn't they? Which was kind of like a part tournament, part autumn...
And because it was... Because it was like our own home nations playing each other.
Northern Hemisphere.
It was kind of like, I've already watched Ireland beat Wales. It's like, I don't want to watch Ireland beat Wales again 2 months later.
I mean, that that's a fair shout. And I mean, the thing is, like, in the normal calendar year, you get the Six Nations, you get the Autumn Internationals, then you'll get the Rugby World Cup every 4 years, and then, like, not the same 4 years, obviously, and then you'll get the Lions Tour. And that's also worth bearing in mind. We are in Lions Tour year, whether that happens in South Africa as planned or Australia
might get it. Yeah.
I mean, either way, ultimately, I think the ideal would be South Africa, of course. But if it happens in Australia, it happens in Australia. The Lions Tour is a really fascinating watch. I don't think there's anything quite like it in sport. In all honesty, the Lions Tour. You may correct me on. Well, if you think about it,
in what sense? Do you mean just like in terms of anticipation?
Well, no, I just mean the format, as in you've got, as in, I guess the NFL equivalent would be the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, the sort of all-star games. Yeah.
It's for one game, and it's like it's basically just a friendly, isn't it? Let's be fair. Whereas like the Lions Tour, it's like a full-on. Well, it is a tour. It is by definition, the Lions Tour is a tour.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Then, yeah, it's almost like an all-star.
And there's nothing like it in football,
but against lots of teams, isn't it?
Yeah. And you've basically got the best of the the home nations against the best that South Africa, Australia, or New Zealand has to offer.
Well, you could say football as the Champions League, possibly. I mean, I guess that's less of an all-star one because you're
bearing
separated.
in mind, it's not just the fact that it's all-star though. You've kind of got Wales, Scotland, Ireland, England, all merging together into one, like almost like a super team, which I think is really fascinating to watch. As in, it's interesting to see how. Yeah, I just think it's really interesting. I think it makes it unique. Then let's put it that way. And
it should be good.
It should be good. Anyway, we digress. Six Nations starts this coming weekend. Just so you got this in the back of your minds, the first fixtures are Italy, France, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. So yeah, you're starting off with the Calcutta Cup with England and Scotland. Wales, Ireland is always a tasty one. Italy, France. I think that's probably only going one way, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But
really, you want to play Italy in the middle so that you get that break when you need it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. To be honest with you, I guess we'll come on to that a little bit. But I think, it'll be interesting to see how this tournament pans out. So again, just for a bit of context, England were the winners in the Six Nations that finished in autumn. And to be honest with you, I had to look that up because I was kind of like, I can't even remember who won. It was such a weird.
Well, yeah, because if anything, the way it went into that, it was going into the final game. Basically, it was like it could be 3 teams, but there was absolutely no.
There was no hype for it at all. I don't think.
Yeah, because I don't think anybody was too bothered by the end. In a sense, not to take away from it. It was just the fact that it's almost like, well, I guess the Premier League had a big break between the start and the finish, but there was quite a lot of games after.
Yeah,
there was quite a lot of games before. But when it's just one game, it's kind of like having a Champions League.
It's all
the way through, and then having the final the next December.
It's like, almost over before you get built up and ready for it. And the thing is as well, it's one of those things like rugby is very much a game of, like it's about building. It's about building foundations between games. You improve your. Like, for example, if you're Ireland, your kicking game becomes more accurate and more effective as the tournament goes on. Your attack becomes a bit more sharp as the games go on, because obviously you're playing, these players will have played at regional or club level, obviously, but then as soon as you get to international, it is a big step up. And I think because you have that huge gap, all of that momentum kind of just goes out of the window. So just for context, England won the tournament last year. Followed by France, followed by Ireland, then Scotland, then Wales, and then Italy. And
did France only lose on points difference?
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, that's basically a tie.
You can tell we're Welshmen already. But yeah, so fairly tight tournament last year. France were real dark horses going into the tournament. Does that mean that they're under a bit more pressure this year to perform? Possibly. I guess there's an element of which teams are, for a little while now, France have been kind of a sleeping giant, I guess. Historically a very good side, but in recent times have not done really anything to worry any of the other teams in the tournament apart from Italy. And that's not particularly hard. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they all go again this year. I mean, the first question is: do we think there's going to be a Grand Slam? Do we think any team is going to win all their games? And I think that's fairly elusive anyway, particularly in modern rugby, because rugby's so physical nowadays. And I know they have the regulations with tackling and all that sort of thing now. It's a lot.
Do you know when the last Grand Slam was?
It was Wales, I believe.
Oh, was it?
The chances.
I 100% already knew that before I asked you.
Did you?
I did.
Let me have a look at this. I'm just gonna.
I think it was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2019. I think it was.
Yeah, I think we did do it then. Because I think the final one was against Ireland in the rain, in the Millennium, and they said they wanted open because they wanted to ruin the
2019
party.
was the last Grand Slam.
Yeah.
But as in.
I'll tell you what though, that shows that a team can go from 1st to 5th as Wales did
Oh
last
yeah, absolutely.
year.
Well,
But also I think England did close to that the year before that. They were going from the top to the bottom. Not to the
Yeah.
bottom because Italy are there. But
yeah, the thing is well, I guess we'll come on to that. There's been a lot of different factors, or there are a lot of different factors, I should say, that is going to very much influence each of the teams going into the next tournament. You know, it's worth considering as well. The calendar is different. You know, you're going to have. I guess it's just like any sport at the moment. It's excuse me. It's just a lot more condensed, isn't it? Because of coronavirus, everything's kind of been messed around and it's unsettled. Let's put it like that. Yeah, and you know, rugby is one of those sports where recovery time is a huge factor. So
yeah, because isn't the system go? You have one game. What was it? 2 games, then a break, then a game, then a break, then 2 games, then a break, then the last game. Or was that? No, it might be 2 break, 1 break, 2, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like that.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of break time.
Yeah, well, it is, and at the same time, it's not. As in, I guess what we got to remember
Does it need that many breaks?
Oh, absolutely. I think we sometimes in Wales because
I'm very naive about how much break time.
Well, this is the thing: it's not from a as in I don't know. I'm not a rugby player, but I'd imagine that it's not necessarily the with football, there's an element of fatigue, isn't there? And the more football you play, the greater the fatigue becomes, and therefore the greater the risk of injury. You know, like muscle pulls and tendons and ligaments. Rugby is purely it's the impact, the damages. You know, like the amount of players you see have like dead legs and stingers in their shoulders and all that kind of thing. You know, that's not from fatigue. That's just because they've run into somebody very hard and bang. You know, that's injured their muscle or torn ligaments in their knee or whatever. You know, it's one of those kind of sports.
So in terms of rest, do most of the nations rest their players when they play Italy then?
Well, it's a bit of a...
Because if they do, nations like England or France should stereotypically usually do better against that nation, or that should be the game they pick up a lot of their points, because I mean they're the bigger nations in a sense. They've got England's got 20 times as many people living in it than Wales, so surely they've got a bigger pool of players, so they can do better against those weaker teams. I'm sure Wales could still beat Italy if they played like a sort of mixture of second teamers and first teamers, but they probably won't be able to beat them to the same effect and get as many points.
No, well, I mean, I think the thing is the talent pool is huge in rugby, obviously. I think there is an argument for a lot of the time the teams tend to go for momentum rather than recovery. Okay. As in, it's a bit of a cliche, but the amount of times where a team will play a weakened side against Italy and not lose, but as in they don't put as many points on them. And the thing is nowadays as well, you have the bonus points in the Six Nations, which is I'd say new, it's fairly new. It's in the last sort of 5 years, I believe. Whereas before that wasn't the case. It was a case of, it was the number of points you score in the championship and then the points difference. Whereas
do you think the bonus points then assists the bigger nations than the smaller ones? I mean, that's me saying that Wales is a smaller nation. I'm talking purely on the basis that they've got less players to pick from.
I mean, I don't know. I think the main factor for the bonus point is to encourage attacking rugby.
Yeah, I can understand that. But I just feel like it does handicap certain teams.
Yes and no, because then there is always the motivation for Italy to get a losing bonus point.
Yeah,
Which I know sounds a little bit rubbish, but at the same time, a losing bonus point is better than no bonus point at all. Right?
Well, they didn't get even a losing bonus point last year.
No, because, just for context, everyone, the points difference for Italy was minus 134.
It was very tight amongst the other nations.
Yeah, it was.
France got a positive 21, Wales got positive 21. France finished second, Wales finished fifth. So that shows the complete variance you can have.
But the difference is that they won the 3 games that we lost.
Yeah.
The only game that we won was against Italy, so not a particularly good one. Anyway, so another thing with the Six Nations, it's always important to consider who's playing home, who's playing away. So,
Well, because of course every other year it'll alternate, won't it? Depending
yeah.
on if you get
I mean,
3 home.
I guess at the moment it's not as big a factor because you haven't got any fans there. But just
Yeah, that was quite big in the NFL. Apparently, the amount teams should have won by, they weren't covering.
I mean, it'll
was
be
the big
interesting
thing.
to see because like the thing about the Principality that players quite often say about is like the noise in the stadium. But obviously, it's going to be I'm saying that. The fixture list says the Principality. I know they did a lot of their internationals at Parc Scarlet, so yeah.
Well, it says Principality. It's probably Principality.
It probably is the Principality, and I guess at that point they still had the Nightingale Hospital, didn't they? In the Principality, which is why they were using the Parc Scarlet.
Oh, was that the Nightingale? I thought the
it
Principalities
was
one was
the dragon or something, wasn't it?
the Heart of the Dragon. The Dragon's Heart, something like that. I knew it was, yeah. I knew it was that because I made a quiz on it.
It had dragon in it.
It had dragon and it had heart.
Did it have heart? I'm not sure it did. Anyway,
100%.
we digress. Yeah, so I thought it would be good to just kind of do a little bit of a mini dissection of each of the teams heading into the tournament. I mean, on the thing, we've got England there as the number one. Because I did it by the order they finished in the tournament. Yeah, we'll do it that way.
Yeah.
So, England, winners of the tournament last year. I'd say they probably are favourites going into the tournament this year. Just purely on the strength and depth they have.
How much do you think it'll affect them that the Saracens haven't been playing any rugby so far this year?
Well, do you know what? I think that's a very good point. As in,
well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's a very good point. As in, Saracens, for those who didn't know, were relegated last year because of a salary cap breach. So they had a points deduction. So it wasn't that they were playing badly. It's literally they got points taken off them.
Was it like 100 points that got taken off? Or something like mad.
I don't even know. I can't remember. But the problem was they got a points deduction, which moved them down the table, but still in the English Premiership, I think it's called. But then they were basically told, right, if you sort it out, that'll be it. But they didn't. So they then got another points deduction and then ended up getting relegated. So yeah, it'll be interesting because like a lot of players play for Saracens. You got Elliot Daly, Itoje, Mako, and Billy Vunipola, Jamie George, Owen Farrell. A lot of these players won't have been playing a lot of the games. Because the season, from what I can understand, the championship hasn't been going particularly long, as far as I'm aware. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. So, I mean, you've got a number of factors there. You've got the fact that they're playing at a lower level of rugby, which I always think is huge in rugby. Rugby is all about momentum and being able to carry your club form into your international form, which is why you quite often see, like, when you'll have, like, almost like clusters of certain areas of the pitch where you'll have teams, players from the same team, just because they will have played together and they know how each other works. Mm-hmm. Which is why the Saracens have got a big contingent of England starters, but it'll be because if they haven't been playing, I mean, firstly they would have been playing at a low level, like we said, doesn't help. Secondly, if they haven't been playing, there's the potential that they could be going into the tournament undercooked, and it doesn't really matter then how good you are as a player. If you're going into a tournament not being prepared, it would be like a Premier League football team. Basically, like it would be like players not participating in pre-season and then going straight into the Premier League season. Mm-hmm. You got to get the rust away, and you've got to, so it's almost like they're on the back foot before they've started. Equally, there is an element to if they've not been playing, they're going to be feeling mighty fresh.
Yeah, although at the same time, I feel like it's so hard to keep your fitness level up when you're not testing it out, or you can't compare it. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel good. It's like, great. Absolutely. But until you have played a game, I don't think they'll know how they're feeling in a sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, oh, still feeling a bit of the Christmas.
When I say fresh, there's the potential that they could be lacking a little bit of fitness.
Yeah.
But I guess I mean from like injuries, and again, I think with rugby, because it's such a heavy hitting sport, players are always going to have little niggles and little pulls, and just aching generally from where they've been playing, and if they've not been playing, they're going to benefit from not having had those. So yeah, and like I say about it's all about momentum. As in, that's one of the things that Wales are pretty rubbish at. They always start slowly, always start slowly. So and because the Six Nations is so short, there's not much time to recover then. So you've got to hit the ground running in order for the momentum to kind of carry you through games. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that impacts England. I mean, I think that it'll be really interesting. That's something that I've never really seen before, because I know for a while there were rumours that players like Farrell and Natoje were going to go on loan to the Super Rugby, which is like the New Zealand, Australia, South African, and I think they have some Argentinian teams as well, possibly. I may be making that up. Yeah, but the Southern Hemisphere rugby. But that doesn't seem to have been the case. So yeah, jury's out. We'll see how that impacts them. Moving on to France then. Finished second in the tournament last year. There was clear improvement with France last year under Mr. Sean Edwards, who I'm sure a lot of Welsh rugby fans very dearly miss. Yeah,
is he their head coach, or is he just the defensive side of it?
I want to say he's just defensive, but let me double check that.
Okay.
Sean Edwards. Yeah, as in there was clear improvements under Sean Edwards. France have. Sorry,
a lot of goal line stops, wasn't it? That was kind of the theme of them against a lot of the nations. That they weren't giving up very many tries, which is
a
staple piece of Mr. Edwards' reign.
Where is it? I'm trying to look. I'm sure he's the defence coach. Yes, he is the defence coach. But yeah, as in, France have always been they've always been fairly creative. Perhaps not as much in modern times as they have been in the past. Nowadays France just tend to be quite, they're like hulks of men. They're absolutely enormous. Still fairly creative, but it kind of balances out a little bit. But as in, the one thing that Sean Edwards did last year is he was able to give them a solid defence. Yeah. And I do think it is the case in rugby nowadays that your attack is only as good as the foundations that your defence creates. If your attack is on the... No, it sounds silly. Sorry, not attack. If your defence is on the offence, if that makes sense, as in, if you've got an intensive defensive line really up in the opposition's faces...
I get you.
That can create opportunities then. So yeah, I think that was huge for France last year, and I think, I feel like last year for France they kind of almost set the foundation for what they want to do. It's like, right, this is how we're going to play. I think the combination of Dupont and Tamac was excellent. I would argue that arguably one of the best 9-10 combos in the tournament. I think it probably is, in all honesty, because Dupont in the Six Nations last year was unreal. Yeah, so I guess we'll see how that pans out. Who knows? Could they kick on and win the tournament? I certainly hope so. I wouldn't mind. Obviously, I want Wales to win first and foremost, being a Welshman. But I wouldn't be. I certainly wouldn't be against France returning to the top of Northern Hemisphere rugby. That would be quite tasty.
Do you think they'll be second or top two again?
Based on their performances last year, I mean, again, I'll be honest, I can't say that I followed the French rugby this season. I think based on their performance in the Six Nations last year, I would certainly say so. As in terms of the defence, it was excellent. And you'd assume that it's only going to get better with time, and this is, perhaps I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but this is where Wales, it almost became ingrained in them the way that Sean Edwards wanted to play. And I think as soon as you kind of have that kind of almost like default setting, when things aren't going your way, like the number of times where Wales would be pretty average in attack, but they would just get results purely on the basis of absolutely ridiculously good defence. So I think that alone stands France in good stead. If they can keep, improve that defence, then they've certainly got to be contending, I think, personally. Okay. Ireland, Probably one of their more disappointing tournaments, in all honesty. You know, as in Ireland generally like to be competing at the top.
But they were competing going into the final game,
They
weren't
were,
Because
they
if
were.
they beat, were they playing France? Am I right in saying that?
I can't.
I got a
remember.
vibe that they were, and it was like whoever won could have been going on to win the whole thing. But obviously, I think both of them knew it was going to be England's purely on the basis that they were playing Italy for the final game.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, it's small margins, isn't it? That's the bottom line. Is in when I say one of their more disappointed tournaments, purely in terms of position in the table, and as if you're an Irish, if you're part of the Irish setup, surely the objective would be Six Nations tournament. Like you want to win. Saxton and Murray, as in that's been such a key part of Ireland's way of playing for so long. I think I'm right in saying, was it not Owen, Andy Farrell's first championship? If it wasn't his first, it was one of his, maybe first or second, I can't quite remember. But that, is in kind of a bit of a bedding period perhaps, but Farrell and Saxon, I don't know, I feel like, is it kind of reaching the point now where they're still good, but are they as good, And I think Ireland have been so reliant on a certain way of playing for so long that as soon as they kind of digress from that a little bit, they seem to have struggled somewhat. And it's almost like they don't have any other options. And, it's kind of a case of, for a long time, it's been, if Saxon and Murray play well, generally Ireland play well. And vice versa. And now that they...
So is that all because of the way they're set up to play?
Yeah, as in Ireland have always had a very, very strong kicking game. As in, like, Saxon will get the ball and he'll put it in areas that just puts Ireland in good positions on the field. And,
So do you think they need a complete overhaul to get away from that and be a little bit more expansive? Or is it...
Potentially a bit more expansive.
How long does Saxon have left playing for Ireland, would you say?
I don't know. I mean, the thing with rugby is that often it kind of catches up with players before they're willing to admit, I think. And the thing is, Saxton is one of those players where he generally gets a bit battered purely on the basis of he's so influential to that Ireland team. It's not quite if you stop Saxton, you stop Ireland, but if you stop Saxton, you're cutting out a big part of their game plan. And this isn't to say that Ireland aren't good on the offensive. They've got good players in Lama and Stockdale. Having said that, Stockdale is injured, and they don't think he's going to be ready until the middle of the tournament. But I think there's an element to which the Ireland is almost like they've put all of their eggs in one basket and back in Saxon and Murray with good reason, because they have been for many years now. They have been, well, I would say the best 9-10 combination, I think. But is it a case of now that they have to kind of move away from that, are they going to be struggling? It is worth noting that in the Guinness Pro 14, in the A conference and B conference, they're both led by Irish teams. And generally the club form does translate quite well into international rugby form, if that makes sense. And I think there's an element to which, the way Irish rugby is run in general is very good. All of the teams are, I think it's all of the teams, if not all, then some of the teams are centrally owned by the IRFU. And then that kind of gives scope then to do things on an international level that, perhaps the Ospreys and the Scarlets and the Blues potentially can't. Ireland are a little bit of an unknown for me, in all honesty. I can't quite tell whether it's a case of, Farrell in his first year as head coach, whether that was the reason that they struggled, perhaps, a bit of inexperience, maybe, as in obviously Andy Farrell is clearly a good coach, as in he's a Lions tall defensive winning coach, and not many people can say that. It'll be interesting to see how Ireland go. Going back to the Pro 14, Edinburgh and Glasgow are 4th and 5th respectively, moving on to Scotland.
Is that good?
No, 4th and 5th out of 6.
So
not ideal. Will will Gregor Townsend finally take Scotland to where they wanted him to take them? You know, as in
Do you think he's a big part of him getting that job is just that he's Scottish? Because
No.
I mean, Wales have done well on the back of Warren Gatland, and you know, he's not Welsh, and England have done pretty well on the back of I've forgotten his name. It's Eddie something.
Jones.
Eddie Jones. Am I right in saying is he English?
No.
No, I don't think he was English. No. So is there an element to which top tier nations when they do well they're not, they're not afraid to go away from their roots.
I don't.
I mean,
I wouldn't
France
think
has now
so.
gone to Sean Edwards for a defensive coach.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think so. I think as in Townsend was brought in with the idea of playing kind of attacking rugby. That's what they wanted. And I think there's an element to which Scotland have benefited from that, but I think at the start they kind of almost went too far one way, where it was attack, and there was no kind of regulation between, the 10 getting the ball, and rather than flinging it out wide in their own 22, thinking, right, I'm just going to put us in a good position down the field here. Let's just get into opposition territory. I feel like that has improved over time. Still got quality players. Stuart Hogg, excellent fullback. Again, one of the best in the Northern Hemisphere. Also, Finn Russell has really kind of kicked on. He's playing for Racing now in the French league.
Is that actually what they call it? They don't say racing.
Well, it's Racing. Yeah, I think it's Racing.
Oh.
Or Racing.
No, to be honest,
anyway.
I'm not as cultured as you are in rugby. So
well, what can I say? That's my 1/20th French coming up there.
Very nice, very nice.
Racing. Is in, again, very creative number 10. Very dangerous on the front foot. Is he a little bit too much? Are there times perhaps where he should, again, be like, right, down the field, territory, rather than being like, right, I'm going to fling this out wide. Which, it leads to exciting rugby, I guess. They've still got some other good players like Hamish Watson. Love Hamish Watson. I think he's a cracking number 7. I feel like right now Scotland have like a lot of good pieces. They just need to get like a good solid game plan and just execute it. I feel like with Scotland often it's kind of one step forward, 2 steps back. So yeah, I guess we'll see how they go. Wales. Wayne Pivac is under a bit of pressure. Not a particularly...
Are you convinced by him? Do you think he's going to be there in the long run, or do you think at some point someone goes, there's projects and then there's just some things that aren't working? I
mean, the thing is that since Pivac came in, both Sam Warburton and Byron Hayward have both left. Sam Warburton was the breakdown coach, and you had Hayward, who's the defensive coach. They've both gone, so there must be an element to which they feel that, not necessarily breakdown, but I think defence has been a big issue, and I guess this is going back to what I was saying with France, as in for many years, Wales haven't necessarily been the best team, but if nothing else, they've been just really difficult to break down. And I think that's been one of the more disappointing elements in the Pivac, is that, okay, you can understand that, we've been with Warren Gatland for such a long time. It is going to take time for Wayne Pivac's way of playing to kind of marinate through his squad. But the defence has very much gone backwards, in my opinion. I think whereas before, even when we've not been playing well, we've been gritty. Do you get what I mean? As in, we've dug deep, solid defence, and sometimes we have conceded tries, but it's never through lack of effort, I wouldn't think. Whereas, perhaps lack of effort isn't fair, but, there's an element to which I think nowadays that Wales have become a little bit of a soft touch, like in our own 22s, in teams seem to get a try quite quickly, whereas before they'd have to work and phase after phase after phase after phase, and we'd basically, it would either be they'd get through, or our defence would be so good that we'd force them into an error and win the ball back. Or we'd have someone like Sam Warburton or, Tipperick or Falatau or Ken Owens to get over the ball and win us a turnover, So yeah, there is, and again, Pivot, some slightly interesting choices going into the tournament. Reece Webb excluded, which is odd, I think. Again, I've not been following the regional, but
I was going to say, wasn't it always... He was always been our best scrum half.
well,
But
yeah,
he was playing in France, so he wasn't
yeah,
allowed to play for
yeah,
us. And it's like...
it seems like
Yeah.
a little bit of a, as in, I think Reece Webb on paper is our most talented scrum half.
Is this scapegoating? Do you think he's like, oh,
Well, I
let's
don't
take
know.
the blame off
I
and put it
don't
on
know.
somebody else?
The only thing I can think is that there's been some sort of disagreement or something like that. I really don't know. Or perhaps Pivot has just looked at it and gone, I don't think Reece Webb warrants selection. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what Wayne Pivot is thinking? Also, Dan Lydiate returning. He's been out of the international scene for a little while now. I think there may be an element to which Dan Lydiate he's kind of bringing Lydiate in the hope of improving our defence a little bit. That kind of, like I was saying, that grit. Dan Lydiate is known for, they called him the chopper because of his chop tackles. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Wayne Pivac, or Pivac, however you say it, he was the Scarlets coach, am I wrong?
He was. You are correct.
Was Dan Lydiate a Scarlet?
No, Dan Lydiate. Oh, was he a Scarlet?
I just wondered how many
He's
of
played
those
for the
Welsh lads
Ospreys.
are getting in that squad
He played for
because
the
they are
Ospreys now.
Scarlets.
He plays for the Ospreys
okay.
now. I want to say that Dan Lydiate was Dragons, but I may be imagining that. I honestly can't remember. Sorry, what was the question before that?
Well, I kind of just wondered, is he just picking a load of the Scarlets boys because he's familiar with them? Or is there a different issue at hand?
To be honest with you, I think the reason he picks Scarlet players is because generally, not so much this year or the year before actually, but I would say that the Scarlets have been one of the better regional sides. Not so much this year. I think they're struggling, if I remember correctly. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more that. I think it's more that just generally the way that Pivot wants to play hasn't quite worked out as yet, and that's why I think this tournament could be a bit of a make or break really for Pivot. I think if there aren't significant signs of improvement, I think we could finish in the same place, but if there aren't significant signs of improvement offensively, then he's in trouble because I think the argument would be.
You think if he finishes fifth, he'll keep the job?
If there are signs that we're playing good rugby, potentially, but I think that because I think at that point then you could turn around and say, well, no, clearly there is a way that he wants to play. It's starting to resonate with the players, and they are starting to play rugby. I think the problem would be is if Wales basically finish in the same place with no sign of improvement, and then you're kind of looking at it and going, well, the defensive coach went because the defence was struggling. The breakdown coach is gone because clearly they thought there was some issue there, or Warburton didn't feel like he could stay or whatever. We're not scoring tries. The correlating factor is that you're still here, kind of thing.
Do you think though, like if they almost at the end of this one, if they go, okay, you finished fourth or whatever, and we'll give you another year to sort it out, do you not think they might actually be a bit more abrupt in that? Because we are halfway through the World Cup cycle. Like this is the second Six Nations since the last World Cup, so it's only 2 years till the next one. Do you not think that if there isn't serious signs of improvement, they go, if we're going to be genuine contenders at the next World Cup, we need to cut ties and get on with something else, rather than wait another year and then see?
I mean, it's a bit of a tricky one because I do feel like
Wales they seem to always be good every 4 years, or 3/4 years.
Well,
they're always good when the World Cup comes around, then it goes down again.
I won't remind you of 2007.
I know they lost to Fiji then, am I right?
They did, yeah, and we got knocked out because of it. It's a bit of a tricky one. I think you have got some players who are kind of getting towards their end of the career as Pivac has come in. Don't get me wrong, I still think he's an absolute titan, but Alan Wynne-Jones is, he's reaching that age where his performance naturally is going to decline somewhat. I still think he's one of the best second rows in the Northern Hemisphere. Is there an element to which is in a lot of these players, like you think of players like, say, Jonathan Davis, the only way he knows how to play rugby for Wales is the Warren Gatland way, because it's only been Warren Gatland since he's been there.
Yeah.
So it is going to take time for Pivac's way of playing to kind of settle in, and there's almost an element to which, when it's panic stations, Wales right now, that normally where they would default to Gatland's way of playing, it's almost like now they go, right, well, default. Oh no, hang on, that's not how we play anymore. So we need to kind of,
Well, Rob Howley's still out there.
Perhaps I'm being a bit generous to Pivac, but I do think there's an element to which there needs to be a little bit of time given. I think comparing Pivac to Gatland isn't fair, because I think Gatland is outstanding, as in... Yeah.
Although I will say that when Rob Howley was Wales coach...
He was, yes.
He had one bad year, but then from there on out, it was pretty much Warren Gatland 2.0. I don't know if that was the style of rugby we were playing, but we were just getting the results. And I don't know, maybe they go, hey, Rob Howley's done it before. They only got 2 years till the next one. If it doesn't work this year, it's like, get him in, get the system going, and let's go back to old ways.
I would be surprised at that, to be honest, because I feel like going back to Howley would be almost like going back to Gatland's way.
I get what you mean, but Rob Howley's still got, he's at the earlier stages, I would have said, of a coaching career.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
could be a longer term go.
I would say it's unlikely, in all honesty.
Okay.
I would say it's unlikely. But who knows? Weird things have happened. Italy, not really a lot to say on Italy, to be honest. It's just a case of doing enough to bat away questions that Georgia should be in the Six Nations instead of them. Pretty sure Parise's retired now, which, he's their best player, and has been throughout his whole career pretty much. So, can Italy actually do something and turn up and play some good rugby? Who knows? I hope so. We all hope so, that one day Italy won't be the team that just gets absolutely battered by everybody. But
I don't know. I feel like it gives almost everyone else a bit of respite, because I don't think nobody wants to come last.
That's exactly what you think when you create a tournament, isn't it? We'll put one rubbish team in it so everyone gets a bit of a break.
Well, not a break in terms of a game, but it's like, we can't be last, lads. If you are last, then it's like, okay, this is really, really bad. Everyone knows you're in crisis, but as long as you're not last, you're okay.
The thing with Italy is that, like, it seems like they can play okay for like 60 minutes, and then for the last 20 minutes they just go, nah, and just don't bother. Like, it's frustrating. I mean, I'm not. It must be even more frustrating if you're Italian. Who knows? Could this be the year where Italy is so bad that the questions about Georgia really stick?
COVID is going to be the year of change, you know what I mean? Why not make the change now?
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is I kind of agree with you, why not make a change now? But there's also an element of, if they were going to make a change, surely they would have done it already. As in, let's be fair, it's not like Italy being poor is a new thing. As in, I think ever since I've been watching rugby, Italy have always been the worst, or one of the worst teams. So
I know that the reason they got it in the beginning was because they were a particularly good nation, but that was curtailed massively. It's like that, You always, you're not looking forward to the game, but I don't think anybody goes in there thinking we're going to lose a game.
No. There we are. That's our little pre-tournament roundup for the Six Nations. I'm sure we'll be coming back to it as the tournament goes on. We'll probably dip in and out. We'll see what happens. Wales Grand Slam, I reckon. No, I don't.
If you were to do a pre-tournament, who do you think's going to win?
Shall I give you what order I think it's going to be in?
Go for it.
France, England, Ireland. I'd struggle to call fourth between Scotland and Wales. I really would. I feel like my head is saying Scotland fourth. My heart is saying Wales. So we'll just leave it at that, and then Italy bottom. I reckon this could be France's year.
See, I think it's going to be Ireland. I don't know what's going to happen in the middle, but I think it's going to be Ireland.
My predictions were the Bills were going to get to the Super Bowl, and that hasn't happened. I also said that Aston Villa were going to get in top four. That doesn't look like
that's
it's
on the
happen.
cards. It's on the card. I mean, I said Liverpool aren't going to make top four. Who knows what's going to happen?
Just another example of how we're always wrong. There we are. Right, that's our Six Nations roundup. Should we do our highlight of the week?
Yeah, go on then.
Do you want to go first? Because I've done a lot of talking there.
Yeah, I'll go first. My highlight of the week was the Rams and the Lions did a trade, I think, yesterday or the evening before that.
It's bizarre,
But
isn't
the Lions had announced they were going to trade quarterback Matthew Stafford, and that was because basically he's been there and he has been a one-man army for them for years. I mean, I can't remember what year he got drafted, but he's basically just carried that team for so many years, and I think they only made the playoffs like twice in his entire career there. And I think there's kind of just like you know what, you towards the end of your career, we'll let you go somewhere else just to have a couple of good years because it's just unfair on the man. He's given so much to them. And the Rams, I mean, to be fair, the Lions, I don't know if they got a steal, but it was a very good trade for them.
Yeah.
But they got the Rams quarterback Jared Goff, who is by no stretch a bad quarterback. He's not quite as good as Matthew Stafford, but he's not a bad quarterback. But they also got 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick. So, I mean, those picks are all future picks. So, you know, they could range anywhere from the 32nd pick all the way down to the first pick. So you never know how those ones are going to end up. But that's a lot of stuff that's given by the Rams for the Matthew Stafford, and I guess the Rams are just kind of like, let's win a Super Bowl, let's go and win something, and I love the boldness of it.
Yeah, it is rather bold. Can't argue with that. Right, my highlight of the week was Liverpool's counter-attacking goal versus West Ham.
That was lovely. That was.
Now you'll have to indulge me a little bit, but to be fair, I did say to you, didn't I? I said even if Liverpool hadn't have scored that goal, that would still be an absolutely class goal. Yeah, in everything about it was lovely. Trent's pass to Shaqiri was perfect in that Shaqiri didn't even have to break his stride. Shaqiri hit that first time and basically put it on Salah's feet. And then Salah just stopped it dead and then just tapped it in. And that was from a West Ham corner. Absolutely glorious. There we are. Right, do you want to pitch this next topic of discussion?
Yeah, okay. The idea of a European Super League was rejected by FIFA with the threat that any players that take part are banned from international tournaments.
Wow,
which is a bit interesting. It is brutal, but I think that was sort of them making their first big stance, like, we're not going to have a Super League. We don't want a Super League. And, wow, I just kind of wonder what you thought about it. Do you like the idea of a Super League, firstly?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm very much of the opinion if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I feel like.
But is it broke? That's the question.
Wow, that's a bold question. I guess when I say broke, I mean the idea of having the Champions League. I feel like there's something quite nice about having domestic and international.
Yeah.
And I feel like as soon as you... Because would I be right in saying that the European Super League would replace the Premier League and like the leagues?
No.
So would it be like
what
the
they don't
Nations
want
League,
to do,
kind of?
Yeah, strictly what they are saying. They will not... This idea will not take the teams out of their domestic leagues. It will be a side league in a sense. Like, what they want is for Manchester United to play Barcelona on a Saturday. You know, that would be the European Super League. And then on a Tuesday, they do the Champions League. I don't know where they fit in the Premier League games in it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they said, you know, if you're in the European Super League, you don't have to do, say, the Carabao Cup or the or the FA Cup, possibly. I don't know if that takes away a bit from that. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the rewards and the money which is being suggested to take part in this thing are enormous.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean,
it's going to be hard to stop teams saying yeah.
I mean, I guess for me, the question would be not so much should we have a Super League, it should be why do we want to change the Champions League?
Well,
that
the Champions League's full of rubbish teams, that's why.
It is, but then could you not just change how the system works? As in, rather than giving places to teams like Maribor, for example, or Ludogorets, why not give those places to, I don't know, Or could you have, like, say, a playoff system where, well, I guess they do have the playoffs, really, don't they? But, perhaps you could have,
They have the qualifiers.
yeah,
Yeah.
but before it used to be, like, for example, in the Premier League, it would be the top three finishers in the league from the previous season or automatically in the knockout, the group stages. And then the fourth team would have to go through the qualifying rounds. Like, I remember Liverpool doing that when they, the season that they lost to Madrid. Could you not just add
But,
another couple of spaces on the bottom, like, fifth and sixth, maybe?
That's the comparison, though, isn't it? The fact that Liverpool are getting to Champions League finals and they are the team which was having to qualify. But then to qualify, they have to play teams like Ludogorets and even worse, which is, how is that possible? Just to get in. And it's like, well, you look at the inconvenience that it puts for these clubs. And it's not just purely about having a competition which, maybe take out some of the weaker teams and then have like more good teams. I think like when you look at the Nations League and the way it succeeds is the fact that you've got lots of teams with the same quality playing each other. And it's like, why can't we just have some sort of system where it's like, rather than having, Liverpool play Barcelona, I think Barcelona was saying that they play Liverpool maybe at Anfield every 7 years. You know what I mean? It's something like that because that's how often they'll get drawn together, and they both have to make it to a certain part in the competition.
But isn't that
and it's
what
like,
makes
well,
it
you can just have them
special, though?
every single but don't you want to see the best teams go at it again and again and again over the course of a season?
I wouldn't. No, I'm not sure I would. I think there's something quite nice about having it kind of.
You could still keep the Champions League, but I just think there's so many better ways of. I just think a league system particularly for the bigger nations, could be really good. I just think the quality of football would be insane. It would just be the tacticians everywhere trying to work out how to beat each other because the quality of football would be insane.
Do you not think the domestic leagues would suffer then, though?
They could.
In terms of, as in, like, for example, if you've got Liverpool playing, I don't know, PSG on Saturday, and then on Wednesday they're playing Brighton.
But if you constantly say you've got to make top four to be a part of this European Super League, so it's, you still have to compete for it, then I guess they can't really just give up on those ones as much in a sense. But I think it could be
how would
awesome.
you define who gets into the Super League?
Well, by the sounds of it, they're saying that you'd get in on an invitation basis at the beginning. So they're saying 15 teams, I think, is the initial suggestion.
Yeah.
And, well, the incentives to join range from 350 million, and then they'll have 230 million per year. There's some reports say it's between 700 and 800 million just for participation. But when you look at the Champions League and they're offering 100 million and then an additional 100 if you win it, it's like, you're making more money than if you were to win the Champions League just by turning up to this European Super League. And especially with COVID, teams are suffering financially. It's like this could be the best thing for everybody.
I guess in my head, look, don't get me wrong, the Champions League as a tournament has its foibles like any other tournament and any other league. But I think I like the idea of the knockout format, which obviously in a league you wouldn't necessarily get. I do think there's something. Have it like you said. You only play Barcelona Barcelona only play at Anfield once every 7 years. But does that not make it more exciting when they do?
It does, but that means you're going to have 7 different, 7 different variations Barcelona will have occurred between the two meetings of the club. So it's like, you know what I mean? I know a lot, Liverpool didn't play Barcelona when they had Messi, Suarez, Neymar. And, you almost miss out on some of those opportunities to have some of the great teams playing in your
But then
stadium.
My argument would be, at that point, at that point in time, Liverpool weren't good enough to play against.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I think the beauty of the Champions League is that I get what you're saying about the Super League, but isn't it good when, like, for example, Ajax pop up out of nowhere and have a cracking season?
Well, I think
you lose that.
I don't think they're suggesting. I don't think they're suggesting getting rid of the Champions League. I don't know how they are pitching it, but it sounds like they just want it to alternate between the Premier League and the Super League every other week, in a sense.
I can see the appeal of it, but for me, it's more. I feel like they're doing it for the sake of doing something else and doing it for the sake of making more money.
Mm-hmm.
And for that,
You got to look at it though. Why did they suggest a Champions League in the initial?
Well, because it was in
why
addition.
did they
It was
need
in
it?
addition to the leagues, like the domestic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like if you do a European Super League, you're kind of crossing into the kind of Champions League format because it's Europe, and then because it's a league, you're almost kind of crossing into the domestic as well. And I guess here's what I would say, and this may be quite controversial. Would you class the Nations League as a success?
I really like the Nation Leagues. I think it's a brilliant alternative to just qualifying for these European tournaments.
Agreed.
But I also think it's great, the promotion, the relegation system, and the fact that you get to see, you haven't got so many rubbish games against, San Marino and teams like that.
No, I think that's I completely agree with you on that. But do you not think the reason why it's seen as, or it could be seen as success, is because it's filling a hole that originally there was nothing there, and the only alternative was international friendlies, which, let's be fair, who cares?
Yeah.
Where
That's true.
as in the Nations League it had a purpose in filling a hole, whereas I feel like the European Super League is just another competition to be a part of. When
Well, do you not feel like there's a hole in the sense that we've still got a Carabao Cup, which is wasting everyone's time? Why don't we just replace that with a Super League?
I mean, I'll agree with you on the Carabao Cup as a waste of time. You know,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we said that on this podcast before, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm a little bit skeptical, and I can see the. I think I'd quite like to see how it works out. In terms of how do you get into the league. Like I'm saying this from experience. Are you doing it based on current success? Is it longevity? Because
Well, by the sounds, it's going to be 3 years. With these 15 clubs which they're suggesting to invite, they'll be in it for 3 years, and then they'll introduce a promotion and relegation system. But I
isn't
think
a lot
by
gonna happen in
capping the
3
amount
years,
of
though?
team, by capping it in a sense, I understand a lot can change, but I think unless you're a team like Arsenal, but they've been on decline for a while, most teams I think what they kind of want is just to have big teams playing each other to keep the allure of those clubs protected. Because when you've got a team like Liverpool and they drop out of the Champions League for a little bit, like they did, as you struggle then to sign certain players. But if
Yeah.
you've always got that backup of, well, I'm a Super League team and I can always be in the Super League,
But
it's
then-
like that they'll always be able to attract quality players.
But then does that not make the richer richer and the poorer poorer? Because surely the whole, and I'm saying this as a Liverpool fan, as in, is there not something a little bit unfair about the fact that Liverpool could potentially, for example, last season where they finished 8th, potentially still be in the Super League just because they've been invited? Whereas a team that, say, finishes, like, for example, Man City, when they kind of burst onto, or Leicester, for example, who go and win the league, aren't invited purely on the basis that they're not one of these kind of elite clubs, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean, but I guess that's where the Champions League comes in. They'll be able to compete in that, and maybe they only invite Champions League winners from a certain period, and it's like, the Champions League is the way to get in or whatever. I mean, I don't know how they do it, but I do just like the idea of...
I know. I'm not.
No.
I'm not saying it's rubbish because there are dirty things, but I think I'd quite like to see how it works. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical of the whole kind of you're in because you're part of this special group of teams. And I don't really know what purpose it would fill. As in, I get what you're saying about you want these teams to be playing each other on a regular basis, but is there not something special about the fact that they don't play each other on a regular basis? Is that not what the league is for?
I guess
like domestically.
in the sense of the Premier League teams, perhaps we don't notice it as much.
No, that's
because
true, 'cause
they do play big games
you're
quite
right.
often. But when you go to like PSG and
Or
it's
the
like,
Bundesliga.
well, Yeah, exactly. More so PSG because
Yes,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
them. It's like they play no good teams throughout the entire year, and then they'll just get thrown into a Champions League game, which if they lose the two legs, they're out, and that's their two good games of the year, unless they had a good one in the group stage. Same for, as you were saying, Bundesliga. It's like Dortmund
yeah, yeah.
and
There's a few
Bayern
more,
play
but
each other. But when you're at the Premier League, and it's like, well, you're probably playing about 12 to 14 good games every year. It's like, well, you're always satisfied. But I mean, even if you go to the Spanish league, it's like Barca, Atletico, and Real. All of them are just playing 4 games that are against each other throughout a season. It's like, you know what I mean? I feel
mean,
like from those nations, there's an itch to scratch that they want to play
do you know
big
what? That's a
teams
good
more
point.
often.
And perhaps more than anything, this is, if anything, it's damning on the domestic leagues, really, isn't it? Because what they're basically saying is, teams like Barcelona, Madrid, and Atletico are kind of looking at it going, well, the league isn't enough, and with the Champions League, it's still not enough because we want to be playing better teams on a regular basis. Or PSG, like you said, perfect example. So really,
It is literally just them in that league.
yeah. So rather than invest in a full-on Super League, perhaps
And you even go to some of the classically big teams like Ajax, and they're just sort of been stuck on the. I mean, PSG wouldn't be a good team without the Qatar money.
no.
And Ajax are more deserving to be in one of these leagues based on their history and all of that.
Absolutely.
But it's the fact that they play in the Eredivisie, they are never going to be able to compete with these bigger nations in the Champions League. So when you look at it from that side, you go, this could be the lifeline teams like that need, because there's no way they're going to get the money. I mean, they were saying they had to sell Frankie de Jong and De Ligt, and it's like, that's just their business model. They're a selling club because it's the only way they can afford to keep running.
Is there not a case of, for example, if Ajax had gone on to win the Champions League, those players probably would have stayed. So I think there's an element to which success breeds success. I guess what I don't like about this one is that the way the Super League initially seems to be working is that it's doing it based on things outside of, not exclusively, but basing some of the things on outside factors like the popularity of the club, like how big is the club, which to some extent is kind of fair. And like you said, it means that you never have a year where. And for example, if a team gets into financial difficulties, you're never going to have that so you're never going to lose one of the traditional big sides. But then is there not an element to which that kind of detracts away from the football a little bit, because they're not there because they've played to be there. They're there because they've been chosen based on how big they are as a club.
I get what you mean there, because would performance suffer if teams are just there, and they're guaranteed to be there?
Yeah.
I guess that's where the relegation system comes into.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
You can't do that. But I guess in some ways, though, this allows teams to be able to be more, in a sense, like Ajax, like we were saying, they can't be competitive. But once you say, we're a European Super League team, it's like all of a sudden players are happy to play for them, and they'll have loads more cash that they are able to be competitive with all the other teams, and they're able to at least keep those players. At the moment, there's too many selling clubs and there's too few buying clubs that they have all the power.
I mean, I think you are right, and I think Ajax is a good point, as in they absolutely walk away with the Divisa because there's not much competition. They're historically, one of the more successful clubs. Do you think there would be a danger with these clubs? Like if you look at, for example, you'd assume in the Premier League it would be the top 4, perhaps. Like you perhaps have like
Liverpool. You
Liverpool.
probably can't expand it to. Well, it depends if you're chucking Spurs in.
Well, but then this is the thing: does it not create even more of a divide in the league, because they're going to be getting huge amounts of money per season, more than someone who isn't in the Super League? Like as in the teams at the top generally get more anyway, but as in you not creating a bit more of a chasm, as in. Is there the danger that I'm just putting it out into the ether.
Maybe like, let's say they said, okay, each team that's in the Super League gives up a quarter of that money which they get to their domestic league. So even if 4 teams in the Premier League all, go into it, it's like, well, you'd have 4 different teams, and all of that money would be split amongst the other ones. So it's like, obviously in leagues like the Eredivisie, if Ajax gets 75% of that money and the rest of them are going to split 25 between them, it's like, that is hard. But at the same time, if you want, you know what I mean, if you want your best teams to actually do something and you want the rest of your league to get better, sometimes you're going to have to just take it on the chin and say, someone's going to have to walk away with this to represent us, because otherwise we're not going to get any money in this league. I mean, you see that a lot with the Turkish league, where it's like they always flicker between having 1 or 2 teams in the Champions League, and depending on how many teams you have in the Champions League means how many future spaces you'll get in the Champions League if they do well, and what sort of revenue is getting brought back to the league, because they'll obviously pay that team for it.
I mean, that's what happened with I'm pretty sure that's what happened in Spain, wasn't it? They kind of changed that around. They changed it, like I said earlier, they changed it in the Premier League. They changed it so that 4th place was an automatic knockout, I keep saying that, automatic group stage spot, rather than having to go through the qualifying rounds. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I guess it does raise the question, is it, and perhaps this is, I fall into this can't speak this evening, I fall into the category of, don't change it, leave it as it is, it's fine as it is, but is there, perhaps as international football, not international football, kind of like European football rested on its laurels for a little bit?
Yeah.
In terms of format,
And I think that's the problem. I mean, all they're doing is inviting more and more teams to join the Champions League, because they're like, we've got to get them in somehow. And it's like, yeah, but you don't. I think you diminish the value and the grandeur of a competition by just chucking anyone, who wants to play.
Here's a question then. Would you rather them revamp, if they revamped the Champions League, so say, for example, they got rid of all of the, the Maribols of this world, that not literally got rid of them, but as in didn't have them in the Champions League, and like things like, for example, I know we've discussed this in the past, but like the away goal rule, I know that's a potentially controversial one.
I'm not a fan of that.
Perhaps change it so, like for example, last year when they did the Champions League, they almost had like a knockout tournament at the end, didn't they? And it was like its own little mini. And it was because of COVID, but they were like, we're going to this one country, all of the knockout games will be played in this one country. Is there potential for something like that, perhaps, to... And am I right in saying they only did one leg as well, didn't they? They didn't do, like, the home and away, they just did, like, one straight knockout fixture.
Game knockout.
So is there the potential that they could do, like, a one
game
knockout
would be cool.
in a neutral venue?
Yeah, not too... Yeah, that could be good, because then you do get more teams if you want more. Because in a sense, if you were to do a league, you've got to remember that you're going to do everyone twice.
Exactly, yeah.
But then if you do the one leg, it's just one leg. And however many teams you have in it is how many rounds it's going to be of games. Although, if you think about it though, if you were to ask me, would I rather just a revamped Champions League where there's less teams and just the good teams, or would I prefer a league system? I think I'd prefer the league system. Only because if it's a knockout tournament, you don't play as many games, you don't get to see as much awesome football. But I think I'd much prefer to see a league system with even fewer, that, meant that you get to see Bayern take on everybody and Real take on everybody. That is then like, it's always just really interesting to watch, to see what would occur.
I mean, I think we might have to agree to disagree on that one, because I think there's an element of, I quite like the kind of...
I'm not saying I dislike the Champions League.
I know.
Cup. I'll be honest, that's what I was saying at the beginning, was I like the idea of having both a league and a cup version of an elite group of teams, rather than having everybody and anybody's allowed to play.
Fair enough. I mean, I can't argue with that, and it would be interesting to see how it would work in practice. It would almost be interesting to see if they did like a trial year, just to see how it all kind of panned out, and then I feel like I could make my decision on whether I like it or not. But I'm a bit of a sucker for the Champions League. Perhaps it's because, as a Liverpool fan, there haven't been as many highs in the league throughout my life, whereas the Champions League has been almost a bit of a release, Live a bit of the Champions League, I do.
What if they... Well, and this is uber changing things up.
Oh,
What
is
if
this
they?
radical?
This is radical. I always
Okay.
love a radical.
Everyone
What if they
strap yourselves
shrunk?
in.
What if they shrunk all of the domestic leagues to 15 teams rather than 20?
Ooh.
And just meant that they trimmed it down, so they're just playing those on Saturdays now. Because at the moment, they'll, on occasion, squeeze games on Tuesdays, wherever
Yeah.
they can, unless it's a cup. Scrap the Carabao or the League, because I think every league is a League Cup, which is an alternative to the FA Cup.
Do you know what? I think I'm right in saying that France have scrapped theirs.
Because it's rubbish, that's
They
why.
scrapped
I know
one
Spain
of
have got
those
a Spanish Cup and the Copa del Rey. They're two different things. And it's like, just scrap one of them. We'll scrap the Carabao, you scrap yours, everyone scraps theirs, and we shrink our leagues to 15. All of a sudden, you've got so much more time to play against good teams. I mean, even the Premier League would benefit from it, because it means you haven't got... You know what I mean? Like Man United played Sheffield United, and they played a weakened team, and they lost. And they should have lost. And I'm not... But the thing is, you play against a lot of these teams, you just go, we're just going to have to play a weakened side, because it's just not worth playing our best players against them, because the risks outweigh the rewards sometimes. And you know what I mean? There's always classically been this sort of... There's always 5 teams that are rubbish in the Premier League every year, and you're like, oh, those teams really are bad. But then it always seems those other 15, they're always really... I mean, obviously the top few are always a little bit fluctuating amongst each other, but there's always like a blockade, and only one of them will drop out of there every year, and always one of them will get in. So it's like, if you just shrunk it down to 15, you'd have way more competition, maybe reduce so many people to getting relegated and all that, but then you'd have so much more time. You could say, let's have a Champions League and...
So radical.
I know, I'd love that.
I mean, what you're saying there, Jack, as well, is you're basically putting Big Sam out of the job by saying that. And that's radical.
I'm not putting him out of a job. He's just going to get a job at a better club, because they'll still need relegation managers. Did you see that he said West Brom play too complex football? I haven't watched them, but all I can imagine them is punting the ball into the box. So how's that too complex? I don't know.
Too complex?
Yeah, he wants them to simplify it down.
The ball?
He wants them to simplify it down and do more long balls, I think. It's like, good gracious, this man knows his football to his core.
He knows no limits. The guy's an absolute psycho. There we are. Yeah, interesting one. Perhaps if you're watching on YouTube, let us know what you think down below. Super League, yes or no? Champions League, yes or no? Both, neither. Neither? I wouldn't say neither. Super League or Champions League. You know, let us know what you think. Right, should we do our shock of the week?
Yeah, less.
Shall I go first? Because you went first last time, and I want to go being first. Liverpool potentially not getting one, but two centre backs. This will probably be outdated by tomorrow, and we won't have got anyone. But the a guy from Preston and somebody from Schalke, both of which I'll be honest with you, I've not heard of.
I'd heard of the one from Schalke, because I think on occasion he gets good on FIFA.
In hindsight, I'm pretty sure I'd heard of the guy from Schalke.
But I'd never heard of the Preston guy.
No, I hadn't heard of the person from Preston. Davis, I think. Is it Ben Davis?
Yeah. So now.
I mean, the good thing is that apparently the guy from Schalke, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I'll butcher it. We were looking to get him in the summer anyway, and we've now just basically said we'll loan him with an option to buy, which I think is good, because I think there was always the potential that if we signed somebody now, it was going to be a bit of a panic, you know. But it looks like that might not be the case. So that is my shock of the week, because Liverpool generally don't do deadline day signings. Doesn't happen, apart from Andy Carroll, and that was a disaster.
My shock of the week was Brighton beating Spurs 1-0. That was just completely out of the blue. I saw Brighton took the lead, but I thought Spurs would come back. Even though they didn't have Kane, I thought Spurs would beat Brighton. You know, that's Brighton's first home win. No, home win of the season, yeah. It's Brighton's first home win of the season. They beat Spurs, yeah. So
it's not a bad first home win, is it?
It's not.
I mean,
that's
worth
quite
the wait
shocking.
for that. And just putting it out there, guys. If you're thinking, oh, do you know what, I've had enough of this podcast, I'm going to turn it off. You want to stick around for Jack Freeman's stat of the week.
It's incredible.
In relation to Spurs, because it is absolutely glorious.
It is. I can't believe I found it.
I would say it's one of the best stats we've had on this podcast.
I had a cracker. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. I had a really good one, but this is right up there as a good stat.
This is some next level statage. There we are. Sticking with football briefly then, just kind of discussing some of the, I guess kind of going on from what I said about deadline day signings. there are a few players who are possibly available on free. Who knows what's going to happen? The most interesting of which, I wouldn't say the best, the most interesting of which is Mr. Diego Costa. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast.
He's got no club.
Yeah, he's got no club. His contract with Atletico was kind of terminated. So he's got no.
There was a mutual.
Oh, was it a mutual? Fair enough.
It was because they signed Suarez and he wasn't getting a look in. He's like, I want to leave. They were
saying,
like, we don't really need you, so they just did it.
Suarez is top goal scorer in La Liga at the moment,
and they got him on a free.
Well, I think it was like $5 million, wasn't it? It was like.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Well, it may have been free. It was peanuts, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like Barcelona must be kicking themselves. Absolutely kicking themselves.
The thing is, it's almost like Barca have gone, okay, we've got a really bad situation. How can we make it worse? And they went, wow, we got a world-class striker we paid loads of money for from Liverpool. Why don't we just get rid of him for nothing? It's like, great, let's do it.
Well, the thing is, like, you can't.
I forget. Nobody thought Suarez was a bad striker, and I think they just went after last season being so bad. They were like, well, let's get rid of Suarez, eh? That's a good idea.
It's not the fact that they've let him go. It's the fact that they've let him go for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
As in, and like, let's be fair, Suarez is at that age where he's lost that yard of pace, but Suarez is the type of player, he's always going to get goals. He just is.
He's a finisher. He's not like Rashford,
absolutely.
where a lot of his ability comes from his pace. Suarez, first and foremost, is a finisher. It just doesn't make any sense.
No,
I don't know what... Like they said at the end of last season, everyone's for sale except Messi. And it was like, oh, okay. Oh, I think it was Messi and De Jong or someone like that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it. It's like, why they've got a bad situation? And they're just panicking. They're like, wow, we need a rebuild. How do we rebuild? Sell everyone, get as much money as you can, and then go from there. It's like, no. You've still got some good players.
Yeah.
You've got to slowly, gradually, over time, sort it out. And, well, they're not.
There we are. But, anyway, back to
he was
Costa.
he was offered to a top six. Well, we had the chance to just sign a top six club. They didn't say who, so I did sort of net down a little bit of notes about each one.
It's interesting, and Josh will back me up on this, that when it came out that Costa had, his contract was done with Atletico, I WhatsApped him and said, why not?
You got to love a thug. Every team needs a thug in their team. United used to have Ander Herrera. Chelsea used to have Diego Costa.
Liverpool used to have Skirtle.
Yeah, exactly. Every team needs a thug. An
enforcer.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is in... I know you've got a couple of other teams, but I'll just say from a Liverpool perspective, because obviously I'm a Liverpool fan, as in this was kind of just before... Well, just as we were starting that kind of rough patch, where we weren't scoring many goals. And I was like... Is there not, like, could you not just roll the dice on Costa for, 6 months? And just try and, get him to muscle some goals in,
Yeah,
option to Firmino.
You could have done that with Sergio Ramos. He scores plenty.
Yeah, he also gets sent off a lot as well. Anyway, but, I guess there's potential for other teams, really, isn't there? Like, having Diego Costa in would never be...
Well, I'd be honest, when I was going through these sort of, getting the sort of... facts or stats or whatever about each one, the team which stood out was Spurs.
Yeah.
Only because Harry Kane's broken both of his ankles.
What?
And got two
ankles.
Both of his ankles are injured. And Mourinho used to work with Costa.
Sorry, are you serious?
I'm serious. Yeah, broken both.
I need to search this. Carry on talking.
But yeah, I just thought Mourinho's worked with him, and he worked well at Chelsea. And Spurs need a striker. They haven't got one. They've only got Son up top at the moment, so this could be beautiful for them. So that was the initial team I thought might go for him, especially. Well, I feel like the timing was very convenient, especially after losing to Brighton and not having Kane that game. United have kind of just signed Cavani, but he's the only striker. Well, I think they're playing Martial and Rashford, sort of alternating them, but they're not that good at striker.
I'll be honest with you. If you were asking me out of the top six, which side probably wouldn't get Costa, It's
probably be United.
It would probably be United, and not because I don't think they've got the power, but I think
don't need him.
Yeah, you don't need him, and you've got a lot in your arsenal already, and I feel like Diego Costa is one of those players who could quite easily upset the balance of a dressing room.
Oh
Which when Solskjaer has just about managed to balance it out over the past sort of year and a half, the last thing you want to do is add in a firework like Diego Costa. I think. I think it's going to be Spurs. I'll be honest.
Well, on the injured striker front, Aguero seems to be,
Bad shout.
he's going back to he's going almost to Daniel Sturridge in the sense of glass ankles or knees and whatever. He's really not doing anything at the moment.
No.
But yeah, Chelsea could do with him. The thing is, I think Chelsea's more loaded than United in attack, but none of them are working. So perhaps they go, hey, you work before you work again.
Yeah.
And then they did say top six, and I thought, well, Arsenal aren't really top
do you know
six.
what? When they said that, I was like, do they mean like classic top six or literal top six?
Because I thought, well, Villa are a top six side at the moment, but I don't think they need one because they've got Ollie Watkins, but maybe they want someone else. Wolves have finished in the top six recently,
Yeah,
and
they
they need someone to
They're
replace
desperate,
Jimenez. So perhaps it was them. Vardy's injured for Leicester, and they're on a run, so perhaps they want to keep it going. And Arsenal were the classic top six team, and Lacazette's just got injured, but I don't know if they can afford him because they hate to spend money.
Well, and I also read somebody saying that what about West Ham?
Yeah.
In also, as in when you think about it, as in Mikel Antonio, don't get me wrong, Antonio's he's a
I
cracking
don't know if they've
player,
got the finances for it.
but I wouldn't see him as a striker. I'd see him almost more like a centre forward or a winger kind of, rather than an out and out striker. I mean, like you say, the wages would be a big thing, but then perhaps Diego Costa's at that point in his career where perhaps he'd willingly take a bit of a wage cut. No.
I don't think he'd take a wage cut to go to West Ham. I think he'd take a wage cut to go to one of the top six teams. But I mean,
I'm going to London,
regardless,
boys.
Yeah, and guess which team? It's not Fulham, and it's not Chelsea, Spurs, or Arsenal.
Crystal Palace.
It's West Ham. I bleed claret. It's like no, I can't see it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he goes.
Claret.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I hope Umbro get you for their next marketing campaign.
Yeah, but I don't know where he'll go. But I think particularly Spurs, Liverpool, City.
Yeah.
I think those teams could really do with him. And Wolves. I think those are the four teams that could really do with him at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough.
Apparently, I mean, I just read this today, but there's heavy links that Ramos has chosen United as his next club. I didn't know United wanted Ramos or needed Ramos. I mean, I'm more than happy to have Ramos because I know he gets red cards, but I don't think he gets them all the time. He gets a lot of them, but I think he comes with so much quality. Like, I'd much prefer to have Ramos in his red cards than Thiago Silva. Because I don't feel Thiago Silva is a born winner. He played for Milan when they were okay, and he played for PSG, but that's no competition, so that doesn't really count. So it's like, he played for a Brazil side that got to a World Cup semi or quarter, I think semi, but then lost 7-1. So I don't know if I really rate him that highly. So, I mean, I'm more than happy for United to have Sergio Ramos.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think the thing with Ramos, like, I would dread to think what his wages would be.
Yeah.
And I'm
to be honest, though, a club like United doesn't care about that, which is honestly one of the most relief. Like, it's one of the best things about being a United fan. It's the fact that they can literally go out and buy anybody in terms of financial wise.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's the sort of signing that I don't think Solskjaer would go for that.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's, like when we got Zidane. Not Zidane, Zlatan.
Yes.
It was like, we've got big names coming. Paul Pogba then joins. You know what I mean? It's almost that bit like, well, we've got Sergio Ramos. That kind of proves we're on the same level as Real Madrid. I don't think United are on the same level as Real Madrid, but it's one of those statement buys. It's like, well, we've got Sergio Ramos. He's a World Cup winner.
I wouldn't be half surprised if Sergio Ramos ended up staying at Real Madrid, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, lots of teams use United in this way, where they just pretend.
What did you say, sorry?
Lots of players just pretend that they want to join United to get a big contract out of the club they were at. It's like, oh, okay.
No, that wasn't because you said about United, but I just, Ramos has said this before, I'm sure he has, and nothing happens. And I don't know, I think there's a part of me that's like, if Sergio Ramos was going to another club, surely he'd go to, and this isn't to say that United won't compete for silverware, but surely there are other clubs where it's more likely. Do you get what I mean? As in, he's at that point in his career where he wants to go somewhere. He's like, right, I'm guaranteed to win something.
But do you think, because he's got more Champions Leagues than most players, like, do you not think he's going, let's just get some money?
No, I don't think so. As in, he's been at Real Madrid, but if he hasn't got enough money, he's like...
Maybe he's just trying to continue what's... You know what I mean? I think he just wants to stay at the top club.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows?
Sticking on the Spanish theme, this is actually our last point because it was quite a short week. But Marca, which is the big Spanish football newspaper, said that Zidane won't be Real Madrid manager next season, and it's kind of like, well, who's going to replace him?
Well, this is the thing. If they had said that maybe 2 months ago, I'd be like Pochettino.
Yeah.
End of.
To be fair though, if they're not going to do it to the end of the season, I don't
Things
think
happen.
it's... Yeah, exactly. So I mean, who knows if Tuchel will be there if it doesn't actually pick up there?
I mean,
Who knows if Pochettino's still at PSG?
The thing I would think with Real Madrid is that, apart from the merry-go-round that'll pop up between now and the end of the season, I don't see who Madrid could get that wouldn't, they've been through so many managers now.
They have, but I don't think they've sacked them without reason. I mean, I think they go around it with the same sort of mentality that Abramovich goes with his, where it's just like, you have a bad season, you're kind of out, mate. Because there's no real excuse to have a bad season when you know what I mean? You only have to beat 2 clubs, in theory.
Well,
and Atletico's top dog at the moment. So in a sense, it's not the biggest task in the world to say you have to win something at Real Madrid every season, because you've got a 1 in 3 chance of winning a trophy that's Spanish, and there's only 3 teams, so if you're not winning one of them, then you've really let it go. And then you've also got Champions League, which is always a good shout because you haven't got many other games to play. So
Realistically, who would you see as the next Real Madrid boss?
Well, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's work at Man United's been exemplary.
I'm not even going to grace that with a comment. This is what I mean. I don't know who they go for.
Wow.
Now,
thing is, I'm not really thinking about the managers that are available. I'm thinking of the managers that aren't available, and I'm trying to think. Well, I don't know why.
Nagelsmann from Leipzig.
Maybe I don't know if they're ones for taking chances on younger managers. I feel like they want someone who's won something first.
But then, if they're going on that basis...
Do you think they could tempt Big Klopp? Or do you think he is Liverpool through? Because in a sense, he left Dortmund. I know he had a bad season when he left, but he left when it was kind of just like, okay, he feels like he's done. Maybe he wants a new challenge. Do you think he could potentially go? No.
I would say if it were like going towards the end of his contract.
Yeah. How long has he got left as a contract?
I think it's like.
I didn't know he had
something like that. 3 or 4 years.
Oh, fair enough.
If it were towards the end of his contract, I'd say possibly. I would say, for where he's at right now, I don't see why. As in, Liverpool have had a rough couple of weeks. They're still in the top 4. They're not that far off top. We're still in the Champions League.
I get that, but I just meant you know when you just have managers that just go like Guardiola. He wasn't doing bad at Bayern. He just was like,
But if you
been
think
conquered, let's go on.
But as in, but you say he's been year conquered. With the greatest respect, Pep Guardiola conquered a league which didn't really have much competition. He was also going to. I guess what I'm saying is, Klopp has won a Champions League and a Premier League, which is very impressive.
That's all he's won.
Yeah. Well, and he won the Club World Cup and the Super Cup and all of the those ones as well. But as in,
that surprises me because if you actually look at a full body, how many years has he been there now? Is it 5?
Yeah.
6?
5.
5.
But
when you look at it, you go, "Oh, it's only a Champions League and Premier League." Obviously, those are insanely hard to win, but it's surprising.
Well, Jack,
it feels like he's won more.
But you've also got to remember where Liverpool came from, as in they were 8th, 8th solid. As in Christian Benteke was our striker when Jurgen Klopp took over. Ricky Lambert had gone by that point. Anyway, I don't know. I just feel like Klopp, and I get what you're saying about getting comfortable, but I feel like there's still enough of a challenge for him at Liverpool for him to want to stay.
Right.
And let's be fair, he could go to Real Madrid for 1 year, have a bad year, get sacked, and he could stay at Liverpool. As in, for example, if Liverpool finished outside the top 4 this season, are you seriously telling me that at the end of the year the Liverpool owners are going to go, right, you're out?
Probably not.
No chance. As in, the guys won us our first league in 30 years and the Champions League. So,
although you've got to say, Leicester sacked Ranieri less than 6 months after winning a Premier League. Anything is possible.
Yeah,
like
but-
I know what you're saying. He's got a good affinity with them, but you got to think that's Leicester legendary status. There, they were never going to win a Premier League, and it's like he's gone and done the impossible.
But they were close to relegation.
Yeah, well, yeah, close-ish.
But what I mean is, if for example, if Klopp finished 6th, are they going to sack him? Of course they're not going to sack him. As in, that's one bad season. So I don't think... Basically what I'm saying is, if you were to go to Real Madrid, it would be high risk for not much reward, I would think.
They could even go for a second stint of Jose Mourinho. Like, I know it's not ideal because he's not doing particularly well at Spurs, but Real Madrid really aren't doing well themselves. So it's like Mourinho does just drag teams up for a little bit. So perhaps that could work. But yeah, I know what you mean. There isn't very many good... I'm trying to think who's a good manager first. Like, you got Pochettino and you got Klopp and you got Guardiola.
I mean, I
But
think...
after that, I can't think of anyone.
Well, this is what I mean. I think in that top bracket, you've probably got Klopp, Guardiola, possibly Pochettino.
Would you check Ancelotti in there?
Not anymore, I don't think I would, no.
Really?
As in,
I think he's doing wonders at Everton. I think because he's at Everton, it's diminishing his value. But
yes, possibly.
he's still a top
but
manager.
as in, if you remember his season at Bayern, it was a bit of a stinker.
I tell you what, I've just thought, Arsene Wenger. I
Yeah,
think that
would
could
be a
genuinely
cracking
be a good...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Barca get him before, but I don't know how long they're going to stick with Ronald Koeman. But
Yeah,
Arsene Wenger's not afraid of a challenge.
well, and as in, he's got oodles of experience.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, Arsene Wenger will get Real Madrid playing silky football.
Attacking football.
So, yeah, do you know what? As bizarre as that seems, that is actually a very good shout.
Yeah.
I wouldn't argue against that.
I'm trying to think of anybody else who's like someone
In
from
limbo.
ages ago. Yeah, like I
mean,
can't see them going for like a Conte or someone
Well, I
like
was
that.
about to say, what about like Allegri? As in, he was
Allegri
a
was.
he was a
he did
serial
come
winner
to
of
that.
Serie A. He got Juve to a Champions League final, the closest they've ever not they've ever been, the closest they've been in a long time.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've just never been that fussed on him. I don't know. There's almost this thing hanging over him, like it was an easy task to get to the Champions League final, but I don't think it is. I think I've given a bit of a harsh rap for that. But who's
What
the
about-
AC Milan and Inter Milan managers at the moment? Because they're both doing really well.
Gennaro Gattuso is the. Oh no, he's
Oh, he's
Napoli,
not
isn't
leaving. Oh, is he? Oh,
I
fair
believe
enough.
so. Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
the
I
AC
thought he
Milan
got
manager.
sacked. Yeah, I thought he had been sacked.
Yeah,
at some point.
Conte's the Inter Milan manager.
I'm
not
maybe
sure.
he is good. No, he did win the Premier League, and he
In
had
the Premier
one
League,
of
he
the.
might actually be all right.
Well, wasn't he the manager before Allegri? At
Juve, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
As in
he's kind of passed it over to him.
Conte is the man who kind of got Juve back to where they should be, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. There's not a lot of like top managers out there. As in, considering, like you say, Real Madrid generally tend to go for successful when they arrive. You know, as in they generally don't tend to go for young manager project kind of vibe, do they?
No.
Could this finally be the time where Real Madrid do it purely because they have to?
Do what now?
As in, go for like a younger manager and be like, right, we're
Oh,
going to build a
okay.
project kind of thing.
Well, they have. They did Zidane, and it worked for 3 years.
I
But
guess.
yeah, I know what you mean. To be fair, if you're going to go for a project manager, it's got to either be really convincing or an ex-player
Yeah.
of Real Madrid's. So,
Get flipping Raul in there as boss.
gosh, I don't know how that would go down.
There we are. Right, should we finish off with our stat of the week?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Oh yeah, because your stat is much better than mine.
It's amazing.
The only Germans with more Premier League assists than Pascal Gross are Mesut Ozil and Leroy Sané and Dietmar Hamann.
Ah,
It's not a bad
I'm
stat.
trying to
is it?
think how many Germans have been in the Premier League.
Well, I think of Ballack.
Yeah, he was there for a
Schürrle,
while. Bastian Schweinsteiger, but he really didn't work.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem. You don't find many Germans who play in the Premier League, do you?
Truth be told, I didn't even know Gross was a
German.
German until I saw that fancy B he's got.
Yeah. There we are.
And my stat of the week is that following their defeat yesterday, Tottenham Hotspur have now lost 9 competitive games on the same day as the WWE Royal Rumble weekend, which is more than any other English Football League club. So clearly they're up too late watching the WWE Royal Rumble. Their focus is on the Premier League matches, and that's why they're losing games.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the quality of content you get on this podcast.
You know, John
What's
Cena's
that?
a Tottenham Hotspurs fan.
He is.
Maybe that's why they are
You
so
can't see
blinded
me.
by it.
There we are. That's a cracking start. What a way to finish this podcast.
Love it.
Right, thank you all for listening. That is the end of episode 13 of the Down to the Wire podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, why not hit the subscribe button so you can get updates of when we will be uploading videos. If you're listening on Spotify, why not give us a follow? We're also on Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, Breaker. Have I forgotten any, Jack?
I don't think you have.
I don't think I have. And if you're a fan of the NFL, make sure you join us next week where we will be dissecting after the Super Bowl.
The Chiefs should win it.
If you,
I tempt fate all the time, and the Chiefs are winning this thing.
It'll either be a very happy podcast or a very, very disappointing podcast. Actually, no, I'm not.
Unless
gonna say that.
Mahomes
Who wants to
gets
listen to
injured.
a disappointing podcast.
Yeah.
There we are. Right. Thank you all for listening, and we shall speak to you all soon.